Gemini, it gives you wings. Gemini Wing is a 1987 arcade game from Tecmo. I never ever saw this in the arcade. In fact, the first time I saw this game in the flesh was I bought a copy for my Amstrad CPC on budget, and it was on the Mastertronic label, and the original release comes after the Virgin and Mastertronic merger, so it's branded Virgin Mastertronic. What better place to start than on the CPC, and we'll explain the game as we go along. Running on my CPC 6128, as is pretty much normal for this channel. And it is a bit of a multi-load hell on the 8-bits. No detection of 128, it just was just a lot of loading. Off we go. And you are a kind of plane thing, and you have these things tailing behind you, and I've lost them all already. They are your power-ups. Now, as is the fashion at the time, shoot-'em-ups had power-ups, and Gemini Wing is no exception. Except you tail them behind you as you collect them, and then you let them off, well, in the random you collect them. So there goes some flames there. In the arcade you get told what they are, but on the Amstrad it's a little bit different, and they tail behind you. You have to pretty much guess, really, or appear at the screen. C64. A Magitech doing the C64 version. And we do get some music, and the first thing you'll notice on the C64 version is the music sounds a little bit like Space Harrier and an Elton John song combined, but your power-ups are listed down the bottom. So as long as you know what the icons are, you'll know which order you're releasing them in. You don't get a choice of what power-up you release next, that you just release them in order, and you hold down the fire button to release the power-up. Now, Saturday, see Elton John. And that's the downside of Gemini Wing, that you collect these power-ups and you can only release them when in the order you collect them. Spectrum version, loading this on my Spectrum 48K Plus, so you can see the composite goodness, and there we get kind of Space Harrier Elton John as a beeper tune. Remember that screen there with the Kempston and Sinclair on it, the menu screen. That's important, and we will come to that very shortly. So off we go, no music, and there's no 128K version either on the Spectrum. It's all 48K, as far as I can see on the images I've got anyway. And it's a little bit slow and jerky, but we'll come to that. And unlike the CPC, you actually do get to see on the right-hand side there what power-ups you've got. So as long as you know what the icons are, you're laughing. MSX version. Spot the problem on the menu screen. Keyboard, Sinclair and Kempston. Let's select Sinclair, shall we? That presumably means joystick. And nothing responds. Nothing responds at all. I'm just flying along, and you're getting the impression the people who did this conversion didn't care. Let's select Kempston. Perhaps Kempston will be, oh, I can fire, and I can't move. So all the joystick options on my MSX at least are useless. This is a Spanish conversion, by the way, DROsoft. I have to go on keyboard for this now, aren't I? And yeah, it's one of those. I always talk about MSX weekend conversion done by kids for 500 quid, and this is or less than that probably. And yeah, this is one of them really. A Sinclair Spectrum conversion on the MSX that's so terrible they left the Sinclair and Kempston joystick options in the menu. This is later into level 1. It plays the same as the Spectrum game. It's a little bit slower. The multi-load, however, does not work on my MSX version, so we won't even be getting that much further into the game. over to the ST. There's some beefy music with the same face area music as before, and it is a 16-bit conversion. It looks far closer to the arcade game. Apparently this was the 8th best-selling arcade game in Japan in either 87 or 88. Power-ups work a little bit differently on these 16-bit versions, but first we go over to the Amiga. I'm still getting over that MSX version. I mean, surely the Spanish publisher would have looked at that and gone, yeah, you know, this whole Sinclair and Chemistry thing on the menu screen. So here we are on the Amiga. It's pretty much the same as the ST version, but with better music. So on these 16-bit versions, you trail the power-ups behind you, like the arcade and the Amstrad version. So it makes it very hard to see what you've actually got. You just kind of randomly end up launching your power-ups. Here's an end-of-level baddie. It's the end of level 1. It's this flying fish thing that fires balls at you. Fairly easy to avoid the balls once you know the pattern he's throwing them in. Amstrad version. The Amstrad version is quite a bit jerky as well. And it's hard to see with those borders on the right-hand side why they couldn't have put the power-ups in there so you can see them more clearly. I found the Amstrad version quite hard to play when I had it, but all versions do have a password system. Unfortunately, the 16-bit versions, the versions I've got, when you press P in the menu screen to load that password system up, doesn't work for me. And level 1 on the Spectrum would be much better than the Amstrad version. The Spectrum version has a bit of pep and vim about it. C64 end of level 1 baddie looks a big blocky mess, but it moves around okay, and this tune doesn't half drive it along on the C64. None of these versions are rated highly in the magazines. I think the best scores were about 60% or so. Commodore Force liked it, but Commodore Force also gave the game away on issue 1. Commodore Force being the relaunched Zap 64. End of level 1 on the ST. I am using autofire on the ST here because I have no power-ups, but obviously if you've got power-ups, because the launching the power-ups is done via holding down the fire key, you can't really use autofire. And off to level 2 on the Amiga. Now, there's an unfortunate thing about Gemini Wing on the 16-bits. It came out the same month as Xenon 2. Think about that. You're choosing Xenon 2 or this. Yeah. Amstrad CPC version. There's a still on the back of the box. The CPC version looks fantastic. It's just when it's all moving, it's just a little bit too jerky. And we are at the end of level 2. And these worm things come out of the mountain and fire at you. A little bit harder. One thing I'll say about Gemini Wing and all these versions is the end of level baddies are quite good. And most of them are fairly... they're not easy to defeat, but they're not going to... Once you learn the patterns, they're quite fair and play by you okay. Until, well, later in the game. And level 2 on the Spectrum. The thing is about all these 8-bit versions is when they're moving, the small parts of the graphics are quite hard to see. For the Amstrad and the C64, it's because the graphics, it's quite busy. On the Spectrum, it's just the usual colour problems. ST version, end of level 2. Look at those nicely defined graphics on that mountain kind of volcano thing, giving a kind of 3D look to it here on the ST. And that background on the C64, you can see how busy that is against your plane when it's moving, and again you do get passwords. So we're on to level 3 on the 64. And a reminder, even though we're running from SD card, this is a multi-load. And my memory says on the CPC, it was such a frustrating multi-load, I gave up on the game pretty quickly. So this is nice, and you have to shoot your way through these barriers. And sometimes they can grow back. Now there's these things that launch missiles at you on this level, and some of them are very unfairly placed. Those ones are okay, but how am I supposed to shoot those guys there? And I know I said the end of level baddies are fairly kind of evenly spaced out as we go over to the ST. Also, this is quite a hard game, and that's something the reviewers at the time noted. If you're laying out your 25 quid on the ST and Amiga, you're having this or Xenon 2. I mean, imagine not knowing and then going to the shop and looking at this and going, I fancy that. And then finding out your mate had got Xenon 2. Amstrad version, all that lovely RGB colour, and then the motion of it. Perhaps the CPC version might feel more urgent if it had music. Or perhaps it might just feel more urgent if it just moved a little bit better. It just needs a little bit more, not much speed. 20% would just get this to pep along. If you had the Spectrum speed with these graphics, you'd be laughing. But it's just that little bit too slow, combined with that whole trying to work out what power-ups you've got problem. Back on the Amiga. And again, you'd say the soundtrack is not bad, it's a good replication of the arcade, but Xenon 2. Brain Thing is the baddie at the end of this level. But you can't wait to see what the 8-bits do of all these, well, it's lots of different sprites moving together, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 sprites or so. All overlapped. Yeah, that's the 364 version, which looks like the Mighty Brain from Commodore format, with many more Mighty Brains as hair. Yeah, this is ugly, really, isn't it? Let's be honest, we can't really get away from this. Amstrad version, yeah, complete disaster, really, this, isn't it? Tiny baddie, and it's slowed down quite a lot, and it's just, yeah, because he's so small, we can't hit him very much. On to level 7 on the Amstrad. And this is the final level on the 8-bits. And they got fire laser beam type things launching up the side of the screen. Which, yeah, you can't really predict when they're going to come back on, and it just gets impossibly hard. It's the kind of thing you'll end up using your passwords, which at least you have to redo the level over and over again to memorise it. And this is the end of level baddie on level 7. And I've battled this thing with infinite lives for about probably more than 5 minutes, and I can't get past him. I think he is the end of level baddie, but I don't know quite what you have to hit or do. And at least with this end of level baddie, it does drop down power-ups. But the frustrating thing is, the power-ups are when they were on the C64. You still can't select which ones you want, so you're completely stuck with, for example, a speed-up power-up when you don't want it, or indeed when it's incredibly inconvenient to have a speed-up power-up, which is the worst kind of power-up system imaginable. And especially when they're so easy to accidentally let off by holding down the fire button, but then so you have to then to fire, you're constantly mashing fire. And that's the game completed on the 64. Congratulations, you have completed Gemini Wing. Lucky us. Lucky us. Sometimes I think I play this stuff so you don't have to. Gemini Wing, and not particularly a spectacular arcade machine, and one I don't recall seeing in any arcade at all. I think it's quite important this game came out the same month as Xenon 2, because Xenon 2 shows you what you can do with this fairly limited formula of a vertical scroller with power-ups, and it showed you how to do it well. I'm not the biggest fan of Xenon 2, but I'd pick that over this game any day. The CPC version looks lovely as a still screenshot, by goodness me. Once you're moving, it just feels turgid and it's just not particularly good. Same for the Spectrum really, although at least it does show those power-ups on the right-hand side, and there's a bit more pep and vim to it because it runs that bit faster. It's still very difficult though, and not particularly enjoyable. C64 version uses the hardware sprites and hardware scrolling to good effect, and there's a beefy tune going on, which helps things along a bit, but it's still confusing when there's a lot going on the screen with very busy backgrounds, which is something that applies to all these 8-bit versions. The MSX version, I can't believe the guy who did the conversion left his name on the menu screen with a credit, because goodness me, I've seen some dodgy MSX conversions in my time, but Gemini Wing just about takes the biscuit. The ST and Amiga versions, well, yeah, I mean, they're fairly polished. It's not a particularly good game. I think the magazine's got it completely right by giving the game ratings in the region of 60 to 70%. But that elephant in the room is Xenon 2, a far better game, and shows you more the possibilities the vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up format has to offer. It's just better in every way, and that's coming from someone who admits that Xenon 2 is iconic, but also thinks it's not particularly the best game in the world either.